Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile. I'm Mike Renner, joined by Kyle Long as always, and we have a very special guest because training camp has officially begun. We are breaking down all the news from it, so we brought in CBS's chief insider, Jonathan Jones. How you doing, JJ?
I'm great. I think that's the first time I've been called the chief insider. That
Chief.
made me. Whew, I like
Chief.
that a lot. I'm gonna have my agent talk with some folks and get a lead NFL insider changed to chief.
It's
That's
got some
great.
zing to it, I feel like.
Hey, dude, JJ, we have been begging to have you on this damn show. We've been doing all these rankings. We've been talking, how each roster is going to look coming into the season. And there's so much unknown when you've got all these rookies on the team, obviously. And we're excited about a number of these guys. As I said, we ranked all these dudes. You can check it out on our YouTube page, Pushing the Pile. But now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. The wheels have touched the ground. These players are reported to training camp. There's a ton of stories to get into. We're all really excited to get into it with you, JJ.
I'm excited. And, I'll say this also, Kyle, I love training camp. It is probably my favorite time of the year when it comes to the NFL calendar. But the one thing I really miss are more teams that go away for training camp. And I know that you lived it, right, Kyle? And I love what the Chiefs still do. I love what the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers still do. And there's less than a fourth of the teams that still go away to camp. I understand it's an operations nightmare, right? Taking all your stuff and taking it somewhere for 3 to 4 weeks. I get all that. But man, where you can just go away, an hour away from home maybe, and just focus on ball, right? And it's just ball all the time. And maybe you're in dorm beds, whatever. You got the best mattress money can buy at home. Stay in that damn dorm bed right now. I miss that. I wish we could go back to it in the NFL.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up because a big part of what happens during the season and what you see come Super Bowl Sunday is as a result of a forging, a melding of a bunch of humans, a bunch of dudes on a team that had to do some hard shit to get to where they're at. And it starts in the offseason. I was always a guy that really, really loved the offseason program. Yeah, I know it's optional. It's not mandatory, but I was there every day. They fed you 3 beautiful meals. You could eat as much as you want. You get massages. You get to lift weights with your buddies. And you forge these relationships that you end up relying upon during the season. And, that's the offseason. You get to do it at your facility. It's beautiful, all that. All with the expectation that you're going to be going away to a destination that might be lesser than your home in terms of luxury, but it's going to exponentially increase those bonds you have with the guys around you that you're going to need when the mercury starts to drop and it gets a little bit chillier and the plays become more meaningful. It happens from training camp. So when you talk about teams like the Chiefs, I think about the Bears who went to Bourbonnais when I was playing. They're obviously training camp is back at Hallis Hall now, and it's beautiful, and people have their opinions about that. But I firmly believe that going away for training camp is conducive to getting your team to be even tighter. It helps you lock in on football. There are 0 distractions in a town like Bourbonnais, and you can go and focus on football. And I'm glad I said that because, a lot of teams are moving away from this. And I know the fans really love to go see these teams. They can set their calendar to, July 27th, Bourbonnais, Illinois. We will be there to watch the Bears. They'll be there for 4 weeks. It's something that we're missing out on now.
I am surprised that with all the sort of analyzing and overanalyzing that happens in NFL front offices, that it's not become more popular because, it's just like basic psychology, right? And you mentioned the shitty beds you're in. It's like the shared suffering that brings people together. That's like part of it is that it's just shitty experience that everyone has that bond. It's like, oh, hey, remember XYZ time and remember those beds. It's like, yeah, that's like something that brings the team tighter. So I am a little surprised that we're moving away from that instead of towards that in today's day and age of, psychoanalyzing every single aspect of an organization. It seems like something that is like an easy win in terms of team building.
Yeah, you would think so. Sadly, other teams, and honestly, I haven't really explored why teams, obviously, with 2020, right? And everyone had to be at home, right? We all understand that. And then so many other things that happened in that year, right? You just, now we're home. Well, now we're just going to stay home. The money that we devoted to that, the resources we devoted to that, let's just do it here at these facilities that frankly, we probably have been shamed into pouring millions and millions upon dollars into updating and upgrading our facilities. Why are we going to lesser than facilities at a local college and bad dorm beds? And bring your mini fridge and your 32-inch Vizios.
Oh, that's charming. It's charming.
Right. I'm right there with you, man. I miss it dearly. But hey, you know what? Pour one out for all the camps that no longer are away from home, and keep doing what you're doing to the 6 or so teams out there who keep going away.
Cheers to that, brother. And this is not a beer, it's a water, but I'm going to cheers to that. And you know what? Just like in baseball, they get their special mud that they rub down the baseballs from a coastal town in New Jersey. It's where the river meets the ocean. I think it's in New Jersey, but I saw it
maybe Delaware.
Late. I saw it late at night, maybe Delaware, somewhere in the, the Northeast along the Eastern Seaboard. If they found a way to synthetically create that mud, they would replace that Delaware mud, and it would no longer be this special thing that baseball has. It's the same thing when you go away for training camp. Did you ever watch Remember the Titans? Take race and throw it aside. I'm just talking about a football team getting to know one another and do some hard shit together, because that's, I use the word forge a number of times, but it's a galvanizing month, training camp. Try to maximize that as much as possible. When you take people and put them in some small wooden beds, man, oh man, watch the magic happen.
What was the Bear Bryant movie? The ESPN Bear Bryant movie?
I got to see it.
It was about training. It was like a training camp, something, whatever. Okay. I should have thought through that a little bit more. All right, let's get to some news though. Some real NFL action happening at this point in time. Zach Tom, Green Bay Packers, right tackle, former 4th round pick back in 2022. Well, he just inked a 4-year, $88 million extension and set the record for the biggest signing bonus at the offensive line in NFL history, $30.2 million. That now makes him the 9th highest paid offensive tackle in the NFL in terms of average per year. That's only $1.5 million more per year than Dan Moore got. And I think we all agree Zach Tom is a lot better offensive tackle than Dan Moore has been. At least he was 6th in PFF grade last year among all offensive tackles. I think that may be a little rich in terms of just like where I'd rank him, but arguably a top 5 right tackle in the NFL. I mean, the only guys I'm for sure taking over him right now are Lane Johnson, Penei Sewell, and Joe Alt. So Zach Tom, to get that at $22 million a year, to get basically his prime years, 27 through 30, feels like a little bit of a steal here for the Green Bay Packers.
Huge steal. And when you look at it in comparison to that Dan Moore deal, it's unbelievable. And kudos to Dan Moore, and for any offensive tackle that goes out there and plays well enough, stays healthy enough to get paid. But this guy, Zach Tom's been great. And one thing I want to point out, if producer Harry in the truck can pull up that picture of Zach Tom again, because you know how much I love pictures. Shout out to Denny's. I like ordering at Denny's. But Zach Tom has that frame. He's got that lean cut like Penei Sewell, not quite like Lane Johnson, but you look at these elite offensive tackles, and they are trim cougars, man. Zach Tom is one of those guys, and even with that shitty number 50, he looks great physically. So, look, let it be a lesson to young offensive linemen. Take care of your health and stay lean, get as big and strong as possible, and you have the opportunity to go out there and make a ton of money. And look, you got Jordan Love. You need to protect his edges. Obviously, they've invested in the offensive line. Lock down this guy who's been really, really good for you. And look, number 9 AAV, that's a great number. It's a good sweet spot to be in for the Packers.
Zach Tom's probably not a household name, even among football fans, right? Like real football fans, not just the football fans that tune in on Sunday afternoon, right? But the real guys and gals. And I think it is partially because he wears number 50. I think it's also because he has that weird thing where he has 2 first names and it's, a single syllable. And so it's just like, quick, just Zach Tom. And so, you don't remember it. But also it's because I think among the teams who have anonymous offensive lines in history, the Green Bay Packers have to be in the top 5 of just anonymous offensive lines, right? And so this is just another anonymous guy on this storied franchise. But you look at this deal, if he is going to be that guy, and Mike, I think that you said it perfectly in terms of getting him in his prime years, right? You had to pay $30 million in a signing bonus, but you probably had to pay some of that anyway because of the sort of cash over cap and all that stuff. you get a guy that you don't have to worry about that side of the offensive line for years to come. It's a smart deal. You anticipate that the numbers are going to continue to rise. It used to just be the left tackle was getting paid, right? And now we have seen probably the last, 5, 6, 7 years.
Right tackle's more important. I'd argue it. Mike says left tackle's more important because it causes turnovers. But I say, hey, look, the quarterback that's right-handed sees the right tackle more often. So this is like, both sides of the argument can win. But let's just all agree that offensive linemen are majorly important to how this all happens.
And I love this one for the Green Bay Packers because they were first to market from this draft class. It's obviously 3 years out. The first year you can extend guys. So they beat, Charles Cross, who was in that draft class, the Seattle Seahawks, who was probably the best of the first rounders. They beat Bernard Raymond, who's probably going to get a big deal from the Indianapolis Colts or someone else. They beat Luke Gedeke, who's been great at right tackle for the Tampa Bay Bucks. So they were first to market. And usually, as you've seen, the price only goes up and the first guy sets the deal. And anyone who has like somewhat of a claim to be better than him or in the same realm, well, then they get a little bit more just because of how NFL negotiations work. So for all those reasons, love it. And I also love it because, I had a second round grade and I'm coming out and it makes me look smart. All right, let's get to some other news here. Tyrann Mathieu retires. The former all-pro safety, slot cornerback, drafted by the Cardinals. Obviously, I think people remember, but it's not as publicized now, but had those, got kicked out of LSU, had that troubled start to his NFL career, dropped in the draft because of it, but he was a stud since day one and actually had a troubled start to his career too. I think people forget that his very first year he tore his ACL, his third year of his career he tore his ACL, still managed a 12-year career, multiple All-Pros, Super Bowl rings in there as well. Tyrann Mathieu, heck of a career given how it all started for him coming out.
One of the realest, really live it. He was really living it. The guy was really living it. When I got to play with him at the end in Kansas City, and he was just, a leader amongst men, and you could tell the way that guys respected him. And I was lucky enough to meet him at the beginning of our careers because we both came out in the 2013 draft. Both of us had massive red flags attached to our character sheet. And we required more than a dozen meetings back to back on one another with these coaches at the NFL Combine, these private meetings. You get a lot of meetings when you got red flags because they want to see it in person and they want to find out, they want to get it from the horse's mouth, I guess you could say. And we had a ton of meetings. And I remember at the time thinking, oh my God, that's the Honey Badger. I watched him every Saturday. And we were on Oregon. I was on a really good team. We had plenty of stars, but I was starstruck going into the draft process, meeting Tyrann Mathieu and watching him have this career after you alluded to it. Year 1 ACL, year 3 ACL, and then the all pros to follow. Unbelievable career for the Honey Badger. What a great dude, a legend in Louisiana. I just hope I know and I hope that he's still involved in football because the next generation of kids needs to learn from a guy like that.
And, it is, we're kind of touching on it, but really to put a fine point on it, our football history is littered with guys who had who had immense talent, who had those red flags, and who ultimately failed in their pursuit of professional football and stardom, right? And Tyrann Mathieu, I think, is one of the extreme few who rose up above that, right?
He refused to be that.
And learned from mistakes. And some of those mistakes are not considered mistakes anymore. He liked weed. Okay, right?
Straight to jail.
Right? And that's just not a deal in the NFL and in parts of society anymore like it was 10, 12, 15 years ago. Okay, we all know that. And the fact that you mentioned all those red flags and you mentioned 2 ACLs, he was on the 2010s all-decade team. Okay, he wasn't just a cultural thing, right? He wasn't just a guy that Louisiana, right? He was a dude up there with the Darrelle Revises. And
you had to know where he was. I remember, 2016, I played right tackle for the Bears, and it was my first time dealing with the littler guys that were on the edge that were bringing the blitzes from the nickel spot, corner blitzes. And I remember we'd play the Cardinals, and I have my hands full at the line of scrimmage, and this guy, 32, would find a way to get by me all the time. And I just, some guys have a nose for the football and an understanding for the game. He had that. It was like Troy Polamalu type stuff where it's like, wait, where did he go? Where the hell is that? He can piss you off. He can ruin a game plan.
If I could tell a brief story, and then we'll move on here about Tyrann Mathieu, just to speak to what kind of guy he was. We interviewed him back when I was with Pro Football Focus. I want to say something like 2019 or so. Interviewed him, went great. He was super nice, answered some questions even before and after. 3 months later, my co-host on that podcast, Austin Gale, announces that he got a promotion at PFF. Tyrann Mathieu reached out to him and congratulated on the side to say that he was happy for him. And that's just like the fact that we interview an NFL player and he kept in touch afterwards. It was happy for us. That's just the type of guy that Tyrann Mathieu is. All right, moving from one all-pro safety to another, Jamal Adams. Remember that name? Former New York Jet, former Seattle Seahawk. Well, he's back with Pete Carroll, signed with the Raiders. Now, I say remember that name because he's only played 583 snaps in the past 3 seasons after obviously tearing his quad. Hasn't quite been the same, but he's not even 30 years old. Is this going to make any difference to the Raiders, JJ?
So I'll say this quickly about Jamal Adams. We have their safety. We know him as a safety. The sort of joke about Jamal Adams is he's not a safety, he's a linebacker. Do not at all be surprised in this training camp if you see Jamal Adams for the Raiders be a linebacker.
Okay.
I think they're going to call him whatever they want to call him, and you're going to figure it out in press conferences or whatever. But if you want to look at a heat map of where he lines up in July and August, I'm telling you, he's gonna be at the mid-level of that defense. I think the Raiders are going to use him, or at least try to use him, because who knows if this is going to work out? Who knows if he's going to be on the Week 1 roster or not? They're going to look to him to be a linebacker this summer.
Well, we know that the position has changed a lot in like the last 10 years. I mean, since I got in the league 12 years ago, the guys who are playing linebacker look completely different. I mean, one of the first heads that I hit at the second level was Ray Maluga. He had a watermelon for a head, and he was like 240 pounds. The linebackers now can run. At a certain point in my career, I played against Ryan Shazier, and God, if you never saw him play the game of football, I wish you could go watch him play when he was healthy. But now it feels like all the linebackers can run like that, and they're all shifty, and they have the ability to hit the gaps on the run. I'm interested to see how Jamal Adams fares if he is in the middle of the defense, because the thing that he's known for is his big hits, but what I don't think he's known for is his tackling efficiency. So if he's going to be at the linebacker spot, it'll show very quickly in the summer heat. Well, I guess they'll be in the AC in Vegas, but they'll find out if he can play linebacker very quickly.
The Raiders kind of have like a linebacker rehab going. So they have him, they have Devin White, and they have Jalen Smith, who I didn't even realize was still in the league, who is another guy who had like a massive injury that really hampered him, but obviously made a comeback from that in the NFL. But all those 3 guys to be, well, backups as it's later right now. I wanted to ask you, Kyle, though, this, because I think it's been pretty clear from watching him past few years that it's just like the former greatness is not there, right? It's not like Jamal Adams going to come back and be the Jamal Adams we saw with the Jets. It's like Jamal Adams could come in and maybe play like a little bit of a role for him. How do you, as a player, how did, when you saw players towards the end of their careers who were once like difference makers, but hanging on to get like minimum deals at the end of their career, what were those guys mentally at, and how were they handling that?
I can only speak immediately from my experience, but if I were to guess at what some of these guys are going through, I would say that there's a handful of guys that when they know that their juice has been squeezed, they get out because, they can't put their pride aside. They refuse to be a guy on the field that they don't recognize as themselves. And part of me wishes that I got out of there earlier because I didn't recognize the guy at the end. And it haunts me to this day. But then there's guys who I also feel this way that can't put the helmet away. They can't stop playing. They love the guys that they play with. They love going to training camp. They love the off season. They love everything about being in the National Football League. Obviously, the paychecks are great. and they just continue to try to play it. It takes going out there and realizing in real time in a big way that you just can't do it anymore. And I'm not saying that that's Jamal Adams, but there's a lot of guys in that boat that are trying to hang on and play again because they don't know what they're going to do after they're done. And life is so big after football that it's like thinking about how big space is. You ever stop and think about and then you get stressed out a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. You're like, I don't even want to think about this anymore.
That's what happens when you're like, oh my God, the locker gets cleaned out eventually. And then like, I got to leave. And then I don't have a swipe to get back in the building. And, no meme intended because Jamal Adams has the meme where he literally can't get in the building. But, that's where I'm at as a former player. Even last year, I was training for a comeback in case, a team like the Chiefs needed an offensive lineman. I never got a call. I never had an opportunity, but it's not going away in my mind. And that's, to be not brief, that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, we hope for the best for Jamal Adams and company. All right. We're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to some Bears news, some 49ers news, some Cowboys news right after this.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
All right, Bears news. We're going to give Kyle his red meat here. Starting off with Ben Johnson said earlier this week, one of his goals for 2025, get Caleb Williams to complete over 70% of his passes. I say, why stop there, Kyle? Why not 100%?
Yeah.
Why not miss a single pass all year? Completed 62.5% last year. Obviously, the Lions offense, Jared Goff, what he's coming from, just had the fourth highest completion percentage of all time in 2024 in a single season, 72.4%. So it's an offense where it obviously can be done. Where do we see him ending up, though, Kyle?
I think it's funny if anybody's ever played Madden and you do a franchise, at the beginning of the franchise, when you create a new coach and you take over a team, they ask you what your goals are for the year. You can either set defensive goals or offensive goals. I didn't realize that as a head coach, that's really what happens. He just went out there and said 70% is what I want my guy to have. Look, Caleb Williams took too many sacks. He was tied for third most sacks taken all time, 68 times in 2024. I give him credit. He battled all year. He was able to elude, dozens more sacks than he accounted for. If I'm Caleb Williams, I'm studying that Jared Goff-led offense, and I'm going to be meticulous about the fact that I need to be on time and in rhythm, and the ball needs to be out. Conversely, if I'm Ben Johnson, I am going to present a plethora of options to my quarterback early in the down that are essentially, I don't want to say gimmies, but pretty much elbow jumpers for an NBA player. 70% is a great spot to be at for expectations, because even if it's unattainable for Caleb Williams, 67, 68 will get us home. And that has to be the mindset. Do not take sacks. That sets the offense back. Have to get the ball out. Didn't throw a lot of interceptions, so I think Ben Johnson probably trusts him to make the right decisions. We just got to speed up that internal clock, and this offense will be disgusting, in my opinion.
Yeah, Mike, I don't know that we're going to see a big ADOT, right, to use some of your analytical terms, right, the air yards and all that. I don't know how many chances that Caleb Williams ultimately is going to take necessarily, because he's got to wait and trust that everything's going to develop. He obviously took too many sacks, and we don't need a referendum on every single sack and whose fault it was. Clearly, when you get to that number, as long as you're talking about five able-bodied people in front of you, some of those sacks were on you. I would say to get 70% completion percentage, which is a great goal, and to get 4,000 passing yards for the Chicago Bears, right? So we know that hasn't happened before. 9 people in world history have ever done those two things together, right? And Drew Brees, the cyborg that he was, did it 4 times. Joe Burrow did it twice, and then you got a list of about 7 other guys who have done it. So more people have walked on the moon than have completed 70%.
Allegedly, Your Honor.
So it'll be difficult, but the thing that is working in Caleb Williams' favor in the favor of anyone in today's NFL. 4 people did it last year. You got Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, and the aforementioned Jared Goff. So take the layups, not even elbow jumpers. Just take the layups and no me bounds.
Remember the Mikan drill where you just stood under the basket and just went,
oh, yeah.
Just do the Mikan drill till your shoulders don't work, Caleb.
To me, the stat I think is more important because he can complete 70% of his passes. And if this stat doesn't change, I don't think it matters. It's the fact that he led the league in the percentage of his dropbacks that resulted in him not even targeting a wide receiver. 27.9% of his dropbacks didn't even get thrown at a wide receiver. That's an utterly unsustainable rate. For comparison, Jordan Love is at 12.5%. So that's, 1 out of 6 dropbacks between the two that Jordan Love's, giving his receivers a chance that Caleb Williams just isn't, whether it's taking a sack, whether it's scrambling, whether it's throwing the ball away, just like he has to do better in that regard. Just ball has to be out, as frankly, you got the weapons. He's got to just start giving them chances this year. That's, to me, is the biggest stat to monitor. And if it drops, we could see a much bigger, just much better Bears offense. All right, next bit of news. Brandon Aiyuk, returning from the torn ACL he suffered week 7, October 20th, almost 9 months to the date, still has no timeline for his return. Are we worried, JJ?
A little bit. ACLs, I think what we have gotten used to are typical timelines, right? For the last several years, we have been able to say that an ACL is an 8 to 9 month injury. That's really kind of been the timeline, right? And for the Achilles, we've always said it's a year injury. Well, it's not, right? I mean, we saw that Kirk Cousins did come back after a year. Nobody wanted that version of Kirk Cousins to be starting at quarterback. He should not have come back after a year, right? And so I'm concerned, and then I'm not concerned. I look at Stephon Diggs, who has a couple of years on Brandon Aiyuk, and he has no limitations at training camp, right, as the Patriots start up. So, yeah, a little concerning, but also I think we have seen time and again enough times that these guys, the ACL, as typical as the return we feel like it is today, it's actually not.
I'm really concerned, Mike. I'm really concerned for this 49er team who's going to be reliant upon the offensive firepower that they have when all their superstars are on the field. So much of this offense goes through Christian McCaffrey, and I continue to question what volumetric load he can take at this point in his career. With everything that Coach Shanahan wants to do with Christian McCaffrey in this offense, the issues that we saw pop up time and time again last year, Brandon Aiyuk being, no timeline is really concerning. You have investments in the defensive side of the ball. You got Salah on board, but really this team will go as far as the offense will take it. Brandon Aiyuk, massive part of this offense. I'm very concerned for the 49ers.
See, I think they have enough weapons still. And yes, Brandon Aiyuk, like if you have Super Bowl aspirations, he's more than likely on the field if you are to win that. But I think the offense is still going to get back to form as long as Christian McCaffrey is back healthy. And
That's the big question mark.
The duo at wide receiver there, and Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall. All right, we got some contract news to get to. Three guys wanting new deals. Micah Parsons, let's start there because Jerry Jones could not help himself yesterday. Made a couple of, I'll just say, insane statements. He went the Kyle Shanahan route and went with the 4 or 5 year contracts. Well, you could get hit by a car next week, right? He went that route when talking about Micah Parsons and the length of his deal. He also gave a compliment to Micah Parsons, saying he's the most knowledgeable player he's ever negotiated with in terms of the cap, in terms of financials, which I can attest to. Every time I've been on the NFL draft show on Bleacher Report in the last 2 years, he will talk about teams' cap situations that aren't even in the NFC. He will talk about how much guys are getting paid. That guy knows the ins and outs of the cap and knows what he's worth. So he's going to get every dollar. And with the new deals from Myles Garrett and TJ Watt this offseason and Max Crosby, those dollars only seemingly going up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if the question is, will the Cowboys fumble the extension, you could argue they have already fumbled it. Yeah. It's just a matter of if the opposition has recovered the ball, right? It's right. I mean, the fact is they should have done this deal last year, but because they couldn't do it last year because they waited too long for CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. So it's one of those just chain reaction things. They should have done CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott the year before. When you have your blue chip players, you're gotta have it, guys. These are the ones that you really truly invest in. Not necessarily the Trayvon Diggses of the world, who the interceptions 1 year probably not going to carry over, right? All the stats say that year to year that's not going to carry over. And so they should have gotten it done. They've already fumbled. Now it's a matter of, can they recover their own fumble? They're going to have to pay him $43 million per year. The guarantees are going to have to be over $110 million, right? I mean, there's no doubt. The three of us, if we just sat down and we could come up with the 4-year contract for Micah Parsons that the Cowboys are going to have to offer him, and he won't accept less. And I do love, you mentioned how media savvy Micah Parsons is. Jerry Jones has been at this for a minute now, right? And yeah, he says some things, and I think we all know that most octogenarians lose that filter. So Jerry Jones, if he ever had a filter, he continues to lose it.
Does that mean in the 80s?
That is right.
Okay.
But Micah Parsons is, he's fighting that fire with fire. He knows what he's doing, what he's saying, and how he's saying it. I think a deal ultimately gets done because that's what makes sense, but no time soon.
Hey, Harry, can you pull up that picture of Micah Parsons wearing the little kid's backpack again? Pay this guy however much it takes, okay, from an offensive lineman. And I said offensive linemen are an integral part of the game plan and victory. This guy is a destroyer of worlds in our world. So get him paid, because the price only goes up. We've seen it happen a number of times this offseason. Figure it out, Landman. Figure it out.
Yeah. Micah Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I mean, look at those traps. Gosh.
I say not only pay him, you got to pay Tyler Smith too. This is 3 years in. This is when you can first start to extend him. Get out ahead of it. He is a all-pro level guard. He is 24 years old. Get a long-term deal with him signed right now. As we just saw with Trey Smith, we got a big deal. If you can get in just above Trey Smith's number, that's going to look like a steal by the time that extension gets put in. Do it right now, or else, well, you're going to go down on the deadline yet again. Seemingly the Cowboys' way. They did it with CD. They did it with Dak. They did it with Osa.
I don't know how people lose sight of this, Mike, that contracts get more expensive over time. I mean, and to your point, Tyler Smith, lock him up. Lock that guy up. He's a great football player. You've got all that youth in the room. Get them all together. Keep them all together. I would love to have Tyler Smith be a Cowboy. Continuing on.
All right, the other contract negotiations. We got a doubleheader going on in Cincy where Shamar Stewart still not signed, still not reporting in training camp. They are arguing over, as Mike Brown said, he doesn't want to pay him if he goes to jail. So they're haggling over that. Is it more than that, JJ?
No. It's that. It was a very poor. We'll start with Shamar. Okay. I have some just strong thoughts on this. It is well within Shamar Stewart's rights to buck at not wanting to sign a contract that last year's first round pick Mims did not have, right? It's a clause. And the clause is a very simple one. It is if you do something that defaults on your contract, and Mike Brown went to the extreme level. He probably shouldn't, he didn't need to go there, but just like if you do something bad, if you run afoul of NFL rules, not only typically would your contract guarantees for that year void. That's pretty standard across the league, and that's what it was. But also the entirety of your guarantees across the life of your contract would void. That doesn't mean that you no longer have a contract. That doesn't mean that the Bengals are kicking you out to the curb. That doesn't mean that you can't earn that exact same dollar amount. It just means
not as protected.
That is exactly right. Now, other teams have that exact same language that is evolving, to use a word from Duke Tobin, the de facto general manager of the Bengals. Shamar Stewart saying, look, I don't want to sign this. And not only do I not want to sign this, but I, as a rookie, when I show up, I'm going to sit at the locker and I'm going to say to the Cincinnati Bengals and to owner Mike Brown that they must be more concerned about winning negotiations than winning football games. No one, you don't say that as a rookie. And as soon as you say that, and you say that to someone who I mean this just in the truest sense of the terms, stubborn and hard-headed and as hard negotiating as Mike Brown is, bro, you are not going to get your way. You are not, and you don't have any leverage. You have no, what are you going to, you're not going back to Texas A&M because you're not suing the NCAA to even get back to Texas A&M to play. That's not happening. They're not trading you because we have established that they're standing on principle. Okay. So you
no
can't,
buttons on his suit.
No buttons. You have nowhere to go. And now your rookie year, you're just going to be worse on the field the longer it takes for you to get onto the practice field with these new peers of yours. This ain't Texas A&M anymore.
No.
So it is at this point, I understand putting up a fight 2 months ago. I 1,000% understand putting up a fight. I think he put up the wrong fight 2 months ago, and now there's no more fight. The Bengals have the high ground. You don't have any men with you. It's over. You just got to give up.
I would argue you have 52 men with you, and you've got 5,000 other men with you that are coming through middle school and high school and college right now that are going to be signing deals that don't want to sign up for this type of language in a deal. You know, as somebody who's been through the contract negotiation part of a career, it's no fun for anybody. The people that are, you know, signing up to pay it and the people that are signing up to do the contract. Yeah, the money's fun, but like you're signing up for so much stuff. Why put something else on this guy that his teammate Amarius Mims doesn't have to do? And you know what? Even worse than that, if he's Robin, if Shamar Stewart's Robin, his Batman just fled to Boca Raton, Florida. I saw on his Instagram story. Trey Hendrickson, the next guy we'll talk about, obviously. And I'll finish on Shamar Stewart this. I support you, young man. Fight for your right, okay? Fight for your right to party, as Travis Kelce once said. That's all. That's about all I got to say about that. I'm sure the guys in the locker room support him and say, yeah, that's bullshit. But at a certain point, to your point, he was fighting the right fight a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Now we're getting into the part where you're not going to be in shape to play. You're not going to be able to help our team. So you might get some guys that avert their gaze from, you know, we support you to, hey, week one opponent. That's where we're at.
And I 1,000% hear you on setting a precedent. There's no doubt at all about that. I think where it comes down to Shamar specifically is because there are some wins in the contract. Every single year, more and more second rounders are getting more guarantees, right? He's getting a higher signing bonus. You can work things to, like, maybe the signing bonus pays out a little bit more earlier, right? There are ways that you can win in these negotiations, but is this the point that you absolutely have to stand and that monuments will be raised for you, for those folks that are coming after you? I don't think that that's necessarily the case, especially when half the NFL and first round picks have this exact same language. Like, the teams are sort of winning in this. And if your response is, well, if I do get in trouble, if I do screw up, I still deserve my money, I don't know that legions of people are ultimately going to back you. Obviously, their response is going to be, don't screw up and do your job. And
obviously.
Yeah, I think it's optically, it's just not a sticking point where a lot of fans are going to have your back. And I was with a lot of Bengals fans over the course of the weekend who were pretty pissed. Like, they're like, why is he holding it?
Were they saying shut up and dribble in Cincinnati? Is that what they say?
Work on your pass.
That's the Cincinnati slogan. Shut up and eat your chili dog or whatever.
Obviously the other negotiation probably has a bigger impact on this year is the Trey Hendrickson one, who went down to Florida after negotiations broke up earlier this week. I think the TJ Watt deal that broke at the end of last week or over the weekend had a big factor in this because, you know, you can play the age card with Trey Hendrickson until a guy who's 2 months older than him, TJ Watt gets a $43 million per year deal. Now, all of a sudden, do we think a deal like this gets done? Because Hendrickson probably not the same level as TJ Watt, but has been comparable over the past two seasons.
They're different players. They're different players, man. Okay, this guy, Trey Hendrickson, is an absolute assassin off the edge. And anybody who is tasked with pass protecting him, let's call it 35 to 60 times a game, is going to be in a world of hurt. We've seen it statistically from Trey Hendrickson. I have no doubt that he can continue to get the quarterback. But when you run up those numbers in age, your ability to play the run or reinvent yourself as a run stuffer or more of a complete player, you just don't have that ability. This guy, TJ Watt, has been doing it for a very long time. And you know what? His lineage has been doing it for a long time. You go watch JJ Watt, the way that he played, the way he played the run and the pass. That's what a complete player looks like. I'm not saying Trey's not a complete player, but he's not at the level that TJ Watt is, well-rounded in all aspects.
Well, the other issue is this is the team that Trey Hendrickson decided to sign with. when he left the New Orleans Saints, right? And everybody knew, and everyone has known since even before Carson Palmer, how they do their deals. They do their deals where you get your first year guaranteed, and that's it. That is what they have always done, and they broke that for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They have decided that we're going offense, and we just talked about precedent and all those things. This is what the Bengals have decided, and they're not willing to set a precedent with a 30-plus-year-old pass rusher who is not the sort of complete player that, it's great that the Pittsburgh Steelers want to do that with T.J. Watt. That's great that the Cleveland Browns want to do that with Myles Garrett. Not doing it with you. And that is the unfortunate part. I will say this, because I don't know that this has really been touched on a lot. You're talking about a guy who has now brought in about $65 million in career earnings, a man who very much is going to stand on principle, right? Because we both know he could have held in, he could have shown up and just held in and not be fined $50,000 per day. And if this goes into the preseason, he will lose $800,000 for every preseason game that he has not reported on. He has the money, so would he escalate this further to a potential retirement? I don't know that we've gotten there yet, but if he isn't getting what he believes he deserves, and he thinks I'm getting half of what TJ Watt and Myles Garrett are getting, and I am not half of those guys, I'm not going to put my body on the line to be insulted. So I see that as one potential trump card for him.
You know how you prevent yourself from being insulted? You continue to go and turn out sack production like Trey Hendrickson does. And I've had this conversation with Mike a number of times. When you're one of these guys who hangs your hat on getting after the quarterback, when it's 40 years after your career is done, you can look back and say, okay, 92, 78, 105. These are sack numbers. It's what they hang their identities to. It's what they have attached themselves to since they put on a helmet. Trey Hendrickson's no different. Obviously, he deserves to get paid. But I think that a guy like him is going to show up and play because that's who he is. That's what we've seen from him. I understand that he's posturing and it's part of the contract negotiations, and I could be completely wrong. But sack getters, they want to get sacks. That's priceless. It's more important than money. Let me tell you that much.
All right, last contract negotiation to get to. Tyraan McLaurin, Commanders wide receiver. Last year of his deal, not showing up to Commanders training camp. How do we see this one playing out, JJ?
I think he ultimately gets paid. I think that they're going to fudge the numbers to get some AAV, that average annual value, that is going to make everyone look good, right? That maybe ultimately this should slot in at essentially being a $28-29 million per year deal. Whether he ever sees $1 of that in 2027, who knows? You're going to win the headline and you're going to get on the graphics that every outlet puts up, and there you go. Guaranteed money, probably no guaranteed money after next year. The difficult part, I remember, was it last week that Garrett Wilson signed? Time is an illusion, but whenever Garrett Wilson signed and he got $32.5 million, everybody's like, oh, well, this only helps Terry McLaurin. No, it doesn't. Garrett Wilson is 5 years younger than Terry McLaurin. Garrett Wilson has never gotten a second contract before. Garrett Wilson is not on a team that just went out and got a Deebo Samuel and all these things and has a quarterback on a rookie deal. These things it's completely different. So when you look at the teams who have had to consider paying 30-plus-year-old wide receivers, every team that Devontae Adams was or is on, you look at the team that he currently is on that used to employ Cooper Kupp. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who paid Mike Evans when there were no comps out there. It's like when when you buy a house and then they have to confirm that the house is worth what it is, and so you try to find the comps in the area. There aren't a lot of 30-plus-year-old wide receivers who are getting paid $32+ million per year. There's no comp. You're not going to find it. So I don't see it working out for Terry. The only way that it does work out, and he will sign with the Commanders, the only way it does work out is there's going to be some funny money in the deal that inflates the ultimate value of it, and he wins the headline in hour one, and then on day 3, when the contract details really come out, everyone knows what it is.
Yeah, I am of the opinion that you can't give a guy's age 32 season a $30+ million cap hit. That has to be on the roster. You're just playing with fire, especially when you have Jaden Daniels, right? When that window's open, you're playing with fire. Just historically, you look at Julio Jones when he was 29. So McLaurin's age last year when he was 29, 1,677 yards. By age 31, he was basically done. Like he was basically ineffective by NFL standards. From 31 to 34, he didn't even have 1,600 yards total in those 4 seasons. Devontae Adams, this was the exact same year that the Packers traded him away. Now, obviously, he's been productive since then, but they looked at, the history of the wide receiver position and just said, it's probably not in our best interest to give this guy a massive, massive deal. And I think you're seeing a little bit with Tyreek Hill in his early 30s starting to go downhill. So and I think you saw it with Calvin Ridley, who just signed at the same age a 4-year, $93 million deal last year with the Titans. And while he didn't look like the Calvin Ridley we saw in Atlanta or in Jacksonville. So for all those reasons, it's got to be, if you are going to give him an extension, no more than 1 year tacked onto this of really having to pay the man. Because after that, I think you're playing with too much fire for a team that's too good and in too big of a window to really say, hey, yeah, Terry, we're going to give you this 4-year deal where you're going to play out all of it. It's just not realistic at this point in time. All right, we're going to take a quick break after that. A few more stories to get to, like Anthony Richardson against Daniel Jones. Who's going to win that job? Right after this. All right, let's kick it off with this because we talked about on Monday's show, but didn't really talk about what it actually means. All the NFLPA drama. And I think it's kind of been more of for most fans, kind of a point and laugh scenario, like, haha, look at this dysfunction, which tends to, be how the world works today, but not really understanding what the effect of it's going to be. So, JJ, you're obviously very privy to this. What's the downstream effects for the NFLPA, for fans, just for the game of football with all that's going on at the NFLPA right now?
Yeah, nothing for the fans right now, right? They're not going to see any impact of what is going on with the NFLPA when they're watching on Sundays. I mean, that's not going to happen, at least this year. What ultimately is going to hurt the players, and it is hurting the players, the NFLPA is in its weakest position, as it has been in a very long time. It has lost its executive director. It has lost what some people would say its shadow executive director in J.C. Tretter, the chief strategy officer with whom I spoke for a very long time on Sunday. You can find that story at cbssports.com, as he has ultimately resigned his post from the PA. Wasn't well liked among the PA staff. He knows it. They know it. And so he has seen himself out. They're going to try to find an interim executive director, someone they like, someone they know they trust, to lead them through this season. That will handle any of the big topics that come up. But the big topics like expansion of international, the big topics like grass versus synthetic turf, the gigantic topic of an 18th game, for example, everything related to those things have been paused because there is no leader for the other side of the negotiating table. And so because of that, any sort of momentum that has been gained one way or the other is not, it is going to be stymied right now. So they'll find a new executive director at some point in the offseason who can then get the lay of the land, pick up. And so if we thought that an 18th game could come in a 2027, for example, I think that you probably have to push everything out a year because of the setback that is the ongoing NFLPA drama.
Gotcha. All right. We've talked about these two quarterback battles, but wanted to get your take, JJ, before we get out of here. Anthony Richardson versus Daniel Jones, Indianapolis Colts. How do we see it playing out?
I think the Colts want Anthony Richardson to win this because they invested the pick that they did in him, because they've preached patience, because this is Chris Ballard's last stand as a general manager. There were a lot of people who were surprised around the NFL that he survived this past year. He did. You go out and you sign a Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson is going to have load management. He's going to be on a pitch count. Either he's going to have a sort of a volume that he has to hit, or he's going to be not involved in every third practice or something like that. So you're going to have to manage a mid-20s-year-old shoulder for a very long time. And that's going to give Daniel Jones an opportunity to win the job. I, as it stands right now, will not at all be surprised if Daniel Jones is the week one starter. And then it's going to be up to Daniel Jones to hang on to that job But if you can't rely on young Anthony Richardson to be healthy enough to perform in training camp practices when he can't get hit in that red jersey, what's it going to look like when he can?
Yeah, it's I feel for Colts fans if that is the case, because it's just the roller coaster you run when you have one of these young, unproven quarterbacks. And why I hope as an evaluator, we'll see, there's one coming up this year in Lenore Sellers from South Carolina, who's super toolsy, but could really use some reps. I hope we see a lot of these guys start coming back to school, get more at the collegiate level. So we get more Jaden Danielses coming out at the collegiate level and fewer Anthony Richardsons and Zach Wilsons. All right. The other quarterback battle, Cleveland Browns, 4 quarterbacks. Do they keep all 4 on their opening day roster? And who ultimately, how's it going to shake out at the quarterback position?
Well, Mike, I thought they had 5 quarterbacks.
Sorry. Was he on PUP or what's?
Yeah. Deshaun Watson has started on physically unable to perform list. Who knows if he's going to even be able to play in 2025. I doubt that he even will play in 2025. The 4 quarterbacks, it goes like this. QB1 battle will be between Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. Joe Flacco has the leg up right now. We'll see ultimately who winds up winning that and how they split the reps. Really no good way to skin that cat. If one day it's Joe Flacco, the next day it's Kenny Pickett, or you split the reps every single day, we'll see who winds up winning that. The other great thing that is working in the Cleveland Browns' favor as it relates to these quarterbacks is they have 2 joint practices this upcoming season. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of Joe Flacco in the preseason games. You're going to see him with the starters in those joint practices, and that will help determine who the starting quarterback is. Then you would think, oh, well, the loser of that's going to be QB2. No, the loser of that will be jettisoned, probably traded in some way, because you can't keep 4 guys on the 53-man roster at the quarterback position. And the Cleveland Browns and GM Andrew Berry, they don't cut draft picks. He does not cut draft picks, and you don't cut drafted quarterbacks. And so Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, while they will get the 3rd and the 4th team reps, and maybe one of them will slot up to 2 on some days or whatever. Don't read too much into that. Whoever wins that battle will then be QB2, and you're probably carrying all 3 quarterbacks, right? Dylan, Shedeur, and the winner of Joe and Kenny on your 53-man, because you don't want to cut them, subject them to waivers before you put them on the practice squad and let someone poach them.
That makes the most sense to me. I do think ultimately Flacco wins. If I had to bet, just given the fact that he's played good football recently, whereas Kenny Pickett just quite literally never has. And he's given your former 1st-round pick and 2 teams have given up on you already. That tends to be a strong signal, in my opinion. Even if he got traded both times, still seemingly a pretty strong signal. If he had showed much, you'd probably give him the benefit of the doubt. All right, JJ, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
for
JJ.
all the insight. We will be back next Monday, obviously, with training camp rolling along. Until then, push.